What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Monday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day edition of the Ship My Money Show. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. Haven't done a show in a while, been busy with other stuff, NBA in general, obviously, really time consuming. So definitely will be getting back on a more consistent timeline once baseball starts. That doesn't take up nearly as much time during the day. Obviously have more time to do content, but wanted to try and get some more NBA shows in as well. I don't think I've done one in a couple of weeks, so gonna try and be more consistent this week. I know I've said that before, but at the very least, definitely will be doing more once baseball starts, so do keep an eye out for that. Hopefully have some announcements coming sooner than later with baseball as well, but gonna run through tonight's 10-game NBA slate. Obviously, a lot of moving parts, a lot of Q tags still. One game at 7:30, 3 games at 8, and then everything else 9 or later. There's 5 or 6 games starting at 10 p.m. So it's a slate where you're going to need to be late swapping. I don't really think that there's any way around that. You're just not going to get 5 or 6 10 p.m. games where everything is just as expected and nothing weird happens. So do plan on being around your computer, being available to late swap if you are playing tonight. Definitely, more so than usual, would recommend that. But going to go through game by game, and this is my first look at what I would be playing in the large $5 tournament on DraftKings if the slate started right now as well. So there is a decent chance that I find something I screwed up or something I don't like or whatever, and we can talk through that as well. But as always, the main takeaway is more so just how these games look than what players I'm getting to 2.5 hours before the slate starts, because obviously things are going to change. And also, there's no need to be trying to, match what I do or take what I say as gospel. More so just trying to give you information on how these games look. So starting with Miami at the Knicks, we have a 102 team total for Miami in an island game to start the night. Obviously, that is just going to make them look pretty unappealing when you factor in that they are likely to not be scoring a ton of points here. But then you also have the opportunity cost of using lineup spots on the first game of the night when you are going to want to maximize flexibility later on. We do have a Q tag, though, on Andrew Wiggins. He did not go through shoot around today. Duncan Robinson and Haywood Highsmith are both available. Wiggins is still listed as questionable. Alec Burks is out. Nikola Jovic remains out. So there is the potential for some stuff to open up here. I don't think a Wiggins absence necessarily makes anything a priority on a 10-game slate, but if he is out, it is going to open up production opportunities for Tyler Hero. It's going to open up more production opportunities for Bam Adebayo. It's going to open up more minutes for the combination of Duncan Robinson, Davion Mitchell, who came off the bench to start last game, but then started the second half. So don't know if he's in the starting lineup, but it's more likely that he is if Wiggins is out. Opens up potentially more playing time for Khalil Ware, who did start and play more last game than he had been. We've been seeing, obviously, Eric Spoelstra be very, very inconsistent with his rotations, with the exception of Adebayo, Hero, and Wiggins when he's available. So basically, if Wiggins is out, the way I would think about it is that it's guaranteed more opportunities for Hero and Adebayo. Their minutes aren't going anywhere. There's more production available without Wiggins on the floor. And then for everybody else, there's still a lot of volatility in their playing time and also in their production, but it does open up more minutes where those minutes have to go somewhere. Now, whether those minutes go to Kyle Anderson, Jaime Jaquez, Duncan Robinson, Highsmith, whatever combination of those guys, Pelle Larson, who knows? Like, Spoelstra probably doesn't know. It depends how the game's going, who's playing well, who pisses him off, etc. But obviously, there are more minutes available for that group of guys where there is a lot of volatility, but there is at least a little bit more upside to that volatility if Wiggins is out. But like I said before, I doubt that anything really opens up as a priority. It would just make everybody look marginally better. It is worth noting, I guess, that Davion Mitchell is only $3,800. Up until recently, we were seeing him play really big minutes since coming to Miami. But even that, you have 9 other games to get to. Davion Mitchell is not a great point per minute guy. So again, more playable if Wiggins is out, but I doubt that anything ends up truly looking great. If he is in, as you can see, 5% projected ownership to come into Hero. Perfectly fine with that. 2.5% coming into Wiggins. That's about where I am. 1% coming into everybody else. I use 1% as my floor. So nothing, standing out here, and that's what you would expect. On the Knicks side, Q tag on Dadier, which does not matter at all. Jalen Brunson is still out. No Q tags on relevant players for the Knicks, and nothing standing out here as you would expect either. If you get to some Miles McBride at 5,500 starting in place of Brunson, that's fine. If you get to some Towns, Bridges, Hart, Anunoby, any of the starters here as a contrarian play, nothing wrong with it, but I wouldn't be looking to prioritize them. I would think that something probably went wrong if I am prioritizing them, because they all just are pretty much correctly priced. You even have Towns up to 10K now. There is more production available without Jalen Brunson, more playing time available. All of that is true, but he's been out for a few games. You've seen the prices adjust to pretty much the correct point. And then you also factor in that, again, this is the first game on the slate as well. So there is a little bit more opportunity cost than usual, but any of the Knicks that just happened to land in a lineup here or there is perfectly fine. McBride, the only one that I'd be getting to if the slate started right now. Philadelphia taking on Houston, 16, 17-point underdogs. Philadelphia, an absolute shit show at this point in the season. They are one of the most incentivized teams to tank because they are in a position where, the actual worst teams are not super incentivized to lose every single game, since they just need to finish in the bottom four. But for Philadelphia, they have to finish in the bottom six, and they have a ways to go to get to the actual worst teams. If they do not finish in the bottom six, they lose their first round pick to OKC. So they are very, very heavily incentivized to be losing as much as possible. They haven't totally gone the in-game tanking route yet. Like they haven't done the Toronto thing where they just bench all of their best players down the stretch of competitive games, but they have kind of gone the route where their best players are all just magically sick or hurt at the same time. And so in addition to their real injuries, where Tyrese Maxey is out, Paul George is out, Joel Embiid is out, Gordon's out, Lowry's out, McCain, guys that are actually hurt. Kelly Oubre is out again tonight. Lonnie Walker, who got a concussion the other day, is out. Yabusele is questionable. This team is shorthanded here. And this is a spot where ownership projections are just not right, I don't think, what I ran right before the show. So that's what's driving up Ricky Council and Jared Butler as much as they are here. I think that they are solid plays. I expect Butler to still be in the starting lineup, but he is up to 6K. So he's not the same level of value that he has been on previous slates. He is less expensive on FanDuel. So I will mention that. I noticed that earlier. He's just automatically a better play on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, or at least a better value. If you want to say better play, then obviously you have to factor in ownership and all of that. But better value on FanDuel than DraftKings. Still does have upside on DraftKings, though. He is obviously somebody that can score, does have a ceiling even at 6K. But I would expect my exposure to a $5,200 Ricky Council and a 6K Jared Butler to come down a bit once ownership is corrected. If you're actually getting 3% ownership on Butler, then yeah, I want a lot of him. But I assume he's going to end up coming in something like 10, 12, 15%. And at that point, I probably also end up around 10, 12, 15%. I think that's about where he should be from a just chances of being good and being optimal standpoint. And then the same for Council, probably like a 18% ownership makes more sense on him. He is a little bit cheaper. He does have forward eligibility, so the opportunity cost is a little bit lower as well. I do think it's likely those are the guys I get to the most from Philly. But if you wanted to go to some of the other pieces too, I think that's okay. You do have Bona still out, Drummond still out. So yesterday for the Sixers, we got the starting lineup of Butler, Edwards, Council, Yabusele, and Grimes. None of those guys are out today. Yabusele, like I said, is questionable. So you had 10 guys available yesterday. Chuma Okeke is on, I believe, a 10-day contract. You have Alex Reese, Doughton, Brissett, Hood Safino off the bench. If you take Yabusele out, obviously you are down one more guy, and that would open up a lot of minutes and make the Sixers look like a little bit bigger priority. But as it is right now, I think it's kind of a team that Council and Butler look the best to me right now. If you're getting to some O'Shea Brissett, I think that's fine. He's 4K, but it is a 10-game slate in the middle of March. There's just going to be plenty of 4K guys that can get there. So Brissett, not really getting much ownership, not showing up as a priority to me. But if Yabusele is out, I would expect more playing time for Brissett. I would expect more playing time for Hood Safino. Quentin Grimes, we know that they have said they're trying to limit. He played 32 minutes yesterday. I assume you're getting something in that range again today. But he is up to 8,100. I thought he was a very good play on the 3-game slate yesterday. I don't think he's a great play on a 10-game slate tonight. And again, this is a slow Houston team. It's a good defensive team. It's a Philly team that has a very low total. So unless they lose another body or two, I don't think they truly look like priorities. I think they just kind of look like some decent value options, but you'll have plenty of other ones as we go through the slate. On the Houston side, relatively high 120 total here for them. No Amen Thompson, no Reed Shepard, no David Roddy. So Thompson, obviously the only piece that matters here. You are likely to get a $6,200 Tari Eason back in the starting lineup. He missed their last game, so you got Jabari Smith in there. But I assume we're getting a starting lineup of Van Vliet, Brooks, Green, Eason, and Şengün. No true priorities here. You can see it reflected in my exposures. You can see it reflected in the field's ownership. I do generally get to a lot of Alperen Şengün, but it is just different today when you have so many games on the slate. There is obviously blowout risk here as well. I've said it before that I think people would be surprised at kind of the lack of correlation between spread and blowouts, but obviously there is still correlation there. And when you get a 16, 17 point spread, it is more likely that this game blows out than if the spread were closer. So if you want to get to some Şengün, some Eason, some Green, these high upside starters for Houston, I think that's fine. Like if Philadelphia does hang in this game, you're getting big minutes from the Houston guys. That they run tight rotations, but again, relatively unlikely that happens. I do think it makes sense too in games like this to be err a little bit more on the side of like if I am playing a $9,600 Şengün at center where I'm going to need every minute from Şengün, then yeah, it makes more sense to be having like Ricky Council, Jared Butler, maybe Quentin Grimes, although he's expensive, in that type of lineup where you're just trying to maximize minutes for everybody. I haven't actually looked at this, but I assume the distribution on Şengün here is going to show him with positively correlated with the Philly starters, Quentin Grimes, Yabusele, Jared Butler, Ricky Council, all the most positively correlated guys with Şengün. And then he actually negatively correlates a bit with the other Houston starters, or not even a bit, a lot with the other Houston starters. And the reason for that is the spread. I see people kind of ask a lot about playing teammates together. It's not a hard and fast rule that teammates negatively correlate, but a lot of it is going to be driven by spread. And when you have a team that is a massive favorite like Houston is, the chances of Alperen Şengün having a big game at the same time that Jalen Green has a big game is relatively unlikely, because if they are both on their way to a big game, it's really likely that they just aren't playing the fourth quarter because the game gets out of hand. If this game had like a 2-point spread, you would actually have positive correlation between those two, because the assumption would be that they're playing a team that is likely to hang in the game and make it competitive. And so you would get a situation where Green and Şengün can both have good games at the same time, and it's pretty likely the other team is still able to hang on. So this is a spot where, if I am going to Şengün or Eason or Jalen Green, one of these main pieces from Houston, it is a little bit more likely that I'd be getting, or I would want, a Quentin Grimes, a Jared Butler, Yabusele, guys like that. So I do think that's just an interesting note for games that do have spreads like this. It's, I think, pretty, I can't think of the word, I'm blanking on it, but self-explanatory, not the word I was going for, but it makes sense. Intuitive, also not the word I was going for, but something along those lines. So moving on to Detroit taking on the Pels in a game with a bit closer spread, 7 or 8 points in this one. For Detroit, we have no Q tags, no relevant injuries other than Jaden Ivey, who obviously has been out for a very long time. And so you are getting some ownership coming into Cade Cunningham here. $9,800 price tag, 22% projected ownership right now. I got to 9%. I think Cunningham's a good play here. I think the price is fine. I will remind you that I had like 30-something% Jared Butler because of the lack of ownership. So any guards where I am lower than the field, there is a pretty good chance it's just because of the ownership, I think, being off on Jared Butler, and he's taking up guard spots. So, as a reminder, don't read too much into my player exposures here, but obviously Cade Cunningham is fine. You see his production go up a little bit without Jaden Ivey. Offense runs through him, usage goes up, assist percentage goes up. That is all accounted for at this point in his salary, but he is still obviously a very, very high upside play. Same goes for a $6,800 Jalen Duren. You're just hoping he avoids foul trouble here, can be on the floor for 28 to 30 minutes. Very good rebounder, very good point per minute guy. Tobias Harris getting 11% ownership. I'm right around that as well at 5,800. And then it drops off to, if you want to mix in some of the fringe Detroit pieces, sure, they're relatively cheap. But we have seen Asar Thompson's playing time come down now that Detroit has gotten healthier. That was something that I was curious to see what would happen, because we saw him playing like 28 to 30 minutes when Tobias Harris was out or when Tobias Harris got injured. And Detroit said, he's not on a minutes limit, but it was unclear if that meant he was on a minutes limit and now he's not, and now he's going to play 30 minutes, or if it meant, yeah, he's not on a minutes limit. It's just he plays 22 minutes when everybody else is in. And they've made it pretty clear that it was the latter. He just lives in that like low to mid 20s range when everybody is active, and they are active right now. So you're not expecting those big minutes games from Thompson. He is only 4,900. So like you could make the case in a 70,000 person tournament where if something happens in the game and Thompson does just kind of get unlocked and get 28 to 30 minutes, he can just single-handedly kind of put you in contention to win tournaments. But, that's still a relatively low probability based on the rotations that we've seen from Detroit with everybody active. So as far as priorities or secondary plays go, I think sticking to Cunningham, Duran, Harris makes sense. That's where the field's at. That's where I'll likely be at as well. On the Pelican side, they have been dealing with injuries all season long, and tonight is no exception. Q-tag on Zion for personal reasons, Q-tag on Kelly Olynyk, Q-tag on Misi, and then, of course, they are without DeJounte Murray, Herb Jones, no Brandon Boston, no Keon Brooks. So this does have the potential to turn into a really messy front court when you have Q-tags on all three of those guys, where you potentially end up getting more minutes for Makovich, you get more minutes for Robinson Earl. But right now, with the Q-tags projected in, not a ton of interest at all in this team. Trey Murphy getting 6% ownership. That's the highest mark on the board. He's my highest owned guy from this team as well at 3%. He's 7,400 shooting guard, small forward. So it is easy from a positional standpoint to get him into lineups. And if you do get Zion ruled out in particular, it is going to make Murphy look at least a little bit better. He, plays big minutes. The price tag looks good. But this is also a Pels team that isn't playing for anything. And so you haven't really seen it yet. But at some point, I would think they kind of take their foot off the gas. Like, this team is incredibly plagued by injury. They've had horrible injury luck all season long. And at some point, they probably stop rolling the dice on Trey Murphy having some catastrophic injury that takes him out for the beginning of next year. Not saying that's super likely to happen, or obviously not wishing it to happen, but like, you're not playing for anything. It benefits you to lose, if anything. Maybe stop running your one healthy piece of the future into the ground in meaningless games. Again, they haven't shown any indication of doing that yet. He's playing 36, 37 minutes, but it will be something to keep an eye on. CJ McCollum for a while was only playing 30 minutes in competitive games. He's back to 32, 33. So again, they're playing it straightforward. They're playing it competitively so far, but it is something I'll just want to keep an eye on. But for tonight's slate, I think if you start getting the Q-tag guys ruled out, then it starts to open some stuff up for the Pels. But if all the Q-tags are in, I don't really have too much interest in this one. And Thompson, Power said that's because the Pistons can't get Thompson to stop fouling. It's not foul related. It's who's available for the Pistons. He played 21 minutes last game with no foul trouble, really. 0 fouls in his 5-minute stint to open the game. Didn't come back until there was less than 4 minutes left in the second quarter. Picked up 1 foul. Played 5 minutes to open the third quarter, which is basically the same as he played to open the first quarter. Picked up a tech. Subs back in with 8 minutes to go in the fourth. Plays down to the 3-minute, 15-second mark. Picked up a foul, but like, it wasn't a foul that should take him out of the game. And then he subbed in and closed for the last minute and a half. Got to 20 and a half, 21 minutes. Like, it hasn't been him just getting in massive foul trouble. Not saying that like there haven't been games where he does get in foul trouble, but the playing time has pretty clearly been limited by, Malik Beasley and Fontecchio and Dennis Schroeder being active. Like, they're just running a 10-man rotation where everybody, is getting at least like 10 minutes. They didn't cut anybody out of this rotation when, they got Schroeder. So, moving on, or going back to the Pels again, you will want to pay attention to injury news here. There is potential for some value to open up. Jeremiah Robinson Earl is only $3,200. Obviously, he's not a great point per minute guy, but if you were to get all of the Q tags out, there's just going to be minutes available for him. Mo Bamba is 3,500. Same can be said there. If everybody's in, he's just getting backup center minutes and probably not even all of those. He might not even be in the rotation if everybody's in. But you take those guys out and he's going to look better. Bruce Brown at 4,300 starts to, become a better option as well. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. Indiana taking on Minnesota in Minnesota, another 8 p.m. game here. Q tag on Tyrese Halliburton. That obviously matters a lot. Q tag on Aaron Nesmith. Pascal Siakam is out. Q tag on Miles Turner. Johnny Furphy is questionable as well. It shouldn't matter, but if you start ruling all these guys out, it kind of does. But Siakam being out, does open up a quality value play in Obi Toppin. I don't know if he'll start or if they'll go to Jarris Walker and then, give Toppin more minutes off the bench. But one way or another, I would expect Toppin to be a popular play here. He is projected for 22% ownership. He's showing up 25% of the time for me. He's a good point per minute guy, and he's obviously just not priced for Pascal Siakam to be out. $8,600 Tyrese Halliburton. I am getting 2x the field on him. Not a lot of ownership coming into him. Not a priority play for me either, but with Siakam out, there are obviously offensive opportunities available for him. And then also it's just a spot where I probably am using him a little bit as a pivot to Cade Cunningham, where he's $1,200 less expensive. He gives you the same ceiling. Obviously, his projection is lower, but Halliburton is capable of going out there and getting 60 fantasy points, and he's getting a quarter of the ownership. So he is somebody that I think in lineups where maybe you're taking on some other, relatively high ownership, or maybe you're playing guys from Minnesota that, positively correlate. Halliburton is a good high upside contrarian play here. 3K, Jarris Walker showing up a little bit. Turner probably plays a bunch of minutes, 6,400, but you do have so much opportunity cost at center that I think it's tough to, prioritize him. So Toppin, I would say, is the priority here. As far as plays from Indiana goes, the value looks good, but you do get a bunch of other secondary plays here as well. And then the potential, of course, for this team to look much different. If Halliburton gets ruled out, you have 4K TJ McConnell, most likely coming off the bench, but playing, 22, 23 minutes and looking like a pretty good value. If you get Nesmith ruled out, you're most likely getting a $4,400 Benedict Mathurin in the starting lineup and looking like a good value. So there is a lot that can change here and can start to look pretty appealing. But if those Q tags are in, I think Toppin's the only priority. And then it's secondary plays from the rest of it. For Minnesota, they are on the second half of a back-to-back after blowing out, I believe it was Utah last night, but nobody questionable here, nobody out that matters. Mike Conley is back after resting yesterday. So again, you just get what you're typically going to get when you have a fully healthy team on a 10-game slate, and that is not a lot of interest in it. Anthony Edwards goes without saying, very, very high ceiling. He's Anthony Edwards, 9,300 is a perfectly fine salary, but there's plenty of other quote unquote Anthony Edwards on this slate. And so it's kind of a reminder when somebody's talking through a slate like this, having a low amount of Anthony Edwards or saying he's not a priority, this goes for Halliburton, it goes for any of these guys. It's not saying that they don't have a high ceiling or they're not a good play. It's saying that there's nothing separating them from the other guys that look just like them across the board. So Edwards looks fine. I will mention this good comment in chat from Richard, but I'll push back on it a little bit. He said, prefer Obi-Wan Kenobi off the bench. Mathurin and Toppin have better usage off the bench. Yes, but you have to keep in mind what is driving that. Like, if Mathurin is in the starting lineup because Halliburton is out, we already know Siakam's out. Like, if Mathurin's in the starting lineup and the starting lineup is Mathurin, Nesmith, Nembhard, Mathurin, Nesmith, Jarris Walker, and Miles Turner, Mathurin's going to have a lot of usage because he's not playing with Pascal Siakam and he's not playing with Tyrese Halliburton. So it's not the actual starter versus bench that matters. It's who he's on the floor with. And so, but that is like, it's a good point what you're saying. I just wanted to point out that it does in this case depend who is actually in or out for Indiana. That's weird. But yeah, so DC said, I don't think the Dub Club link is correct. It's got baseball content. Okay. Are you saying the link that I tweeted out, or that I not tweeted, that I sent out earlier today? Because I'll check that quickly. But yeah, let me know if that's what you're talking about, or if you mean the link in the description. Trying to double check it now. I was working on some baseball stuff last night, so it would make sense if I sent the wrong link, I guess. Yep, that is my strikeout bet tracker from last season, so that does not help you at all. I'll send out the actual correct link after the show. I don't want to get too distracted and hold everybody up, but yeah, thanks for letting me know. I was going through trying to update some of that last night because I've gotten lazy with it last season, and I guess I linked to that instead. So thanks for the heads up. But getting back to the point with Minnesota, any of these guys are fine, but they're also fully healthy. There's no clear value here because the starters are in and they're all playing, their normal minutes. So if you get to Edwards, Gobert, Randall, DiVincenzo, Conley, cool, whatever. Nothing that really stands out at all. Just secondary plays. It is nice. The nice thing about 10-game slates, obviously there is a pretty good chance that some random player that you probably won't have has a massive game and you can't win without him because there are so many guys to choose from. But the nice thing is you can be contrarian by using actual good players like Anthony Edwards or Julius Randle or Tyrese Halliburton or whoever, as opposed to 4 or 5 game slates where if you want a sub 5% guy, he probably sucks. And, that's not a lot of fun. So, Edwards 5% owned on a 10-game slate does seem pretty nice. Chicago taking on Utah in Utah. Utah on the back-to-back. Chicago is going to still be without Lonzo Ball. The Sunmu done for the season. Josh Giddey is doubtful. Kobe White is probable. So you should be getting another start for Kevin Huerter. You should be getting another start for Trey Jones, who has played a lot of minutes as a starter so far. 33.5 minutes last game for him. 33.5 minutes last game for Kevin Huerter. They are both looking like solid values here. 34% ownership coming into Huerter, 30% coming into Trey Jones, 25% coming into Kobe White. That's a spot that I'm not getting a ton of right now. Maybe this has to do with what I was saying earlier with Jared Butler. Maybe it has to do with me just getting to some other spots. 7,800 is generally a price tag where if somebody's coming in at 25% and they're not, clearly mispriced, like I think Kobe White is underpriced for Giddey being out, for Lonzo being out, but it's not like he's like a 10K player or something like that. It is very, very easy to find pivots that are $500 plus or minus that salary. So that could be why I'm not getting to as much of him. You can just kind of make lineups where, yeah, I'm sacrificing a couple of points of projection, but I'm playing somebody that is a quarter of the ownership in that kind of salary spot. But one thing that White does have working in his favor and that is probably driving up ownership a little bit is the shooting guard small forward eligibility. I've mentioned it a million times, but that's the best positional eligibility you're going to get in terms of opportunity cost. You can fit him into the maximum number of roster spots, and it's also the positions that have basically the worst players. You're just not typically giving up as much ceiling if you go mid-range or go cheap at small forward or shooting guard as you are point guard center. So clearly looks like a good play, just one that I happen to not be getting a ton of right now. I am getting a lot of Vooch. He moved back into the starting lineup last game. He played 29 minutes, so we have seen his minutes restriction ramp up relatively quickly. And it is worth keeping in mind that even though they suck, the Bulls do actually want to win games. This is a team that is in the play-in right now, and as ridiculous as that is, because they're like 14 games under 500 or something insane, they are a play-in team and they want to win games and they're not tanking. And so, Vooch, I think at $7,300, getting 13% ownership, I'm a little over 2x the field on that. Good matchup here against Utah as well. So I like that. For the Jazz, they right now do not have Walker Kessler on the injury report. So, you do have him grabbing rebounds, but at the same time, Vooch is somebody that can step away from the basket, can make some shots. He's not reliant on, scoring at the rim over Walker Kessler or anything like that. So I do like Vooch here at relatively low ownership at 7,300. Maybe he's a reason why I'm getting a little bit less Kobe White. Obviously different positions, but similar price point where Kobe White's just getting 2x the ownership. Obviously the opportunity cost on Vooch is quite a bit higher than White, but I do think Vooch looks pretty good. Jones and Huerter, like I said, good values here. Patrick Williams, $3,600 coming off the bench. Still played 22.5 minutes, closed last game. You only got 19 minutes from Buzelis. He was, I think, no, not in foul trouble, just bad. Usually he's going to play like mid-20s, but having Patrick Williams back does cut into Buzelis' playing time. And you can get Patrick Williams in the closing lineup. I think 3,600 is a little cheap for him. He is getting 8% ownership. I think it's warranted. He's probably like a $4,200, $4,300 player as opposed to a $3,600 player. Zach Collins moved back to the bench, 4,600. Nothing really to say there. So from a value standpoint, I think Jones and Herter are priorities here. And then I would say that Kobe White is a priority from a projection standpoint. I would say that at least right now, Vooch looks like a priority to me in tournaments from his ownership is too low for his ceiling standpoint. But, so it kind of depends how you're defining priority for those two. But Vooch and White both look like good plays here as well for different reasons. So the Bulls, as teams tend to against the Jazz, are looking good. On the Utah side, we just got a new injury report, so I'm going to update that. But on the Utah side, as usual, they are doing stupid shit. Jordan Clarkson is questionable. John Collins is out. Keontae George is questionable. George and Clarkson both missed yesterday. No EJ Harkless, no Taylor Hendricks, obviously. Lauri Markkanen is questionable. KJ Martin is out. Svi Mykhailiuk was just added to the injury report. He's questionable. Colin Sexton is out, and Jaden Springer is out. I don't know. It depends, obviously, on the Q-Tag guys. Like, if Markkanen is... So right now, with the Q-Tag guys projected in, I really don't have interest in this team. You're not expecting the real players to play enough minutes to be great options on a 10-game slate. Utah is still fully invested in losing as many games as possible. But if they do start ruling those guys out, you do get a bunch of shitty players opening up as cheap value here because they would be shorthanded. You also potentially, like if you get Clarkson and Markkanen out, but Keontae George in, then you have a $6,900 Keontae George playing without Sexton, Clarkson, Markkanen, Collins, and just, getting 30 minutes of all the usage. So in a good matchup against Chicago. So it is pretty likely that by the time either we get to lock or we get to the start of this game at 9 p.m. Eastern, that there are plays that you want from Utah. It's just a matter of who they are. It depends on how things break here. Obviously, Keontae George is going to be the one that, you would feel the best about if those guys get ruled out. But you do also have the potential of those guys getting ruled out. And, Juzang at 3,600 shooting guard, small forward being a thing, especially if like Mykhailiuk's out as well. We already know KJ Martin is out. So there is the potential for Utah to even end up being shorthanded as far as like players go or wings go. So there is value potential here, but mostly, $6,100 Isaiah Collier, $6,900 Keontae George, they can certainly start to look better if Clarkson and Markkanen are ruled out. Also, I guess, do keep an eye on Utah beat writers. We did have the situation the other day where Markkanen or Kessler was not on the injury report, and then it was announced that Filipowski was starting, and then like 10 minutes before the game it was announced that Kessler was just going to DNP anyway. So there is that potential that ends up opening up like Filipowski or something. So definitely keep an eye on whatever stupid shit Utah is going to do tonight. You're probably going to be interested in Utah players by the time you get to this game. So just a reminder, to factor in maximizing or maintaining flexibility throughout the slate to be able to late swap for whatever news we end up getting there. Denver taking on Golden State in a game that actually has two good teams and is relatively likely to be competitive. And I think that's like the first one of those we've gotten tonight. I guess second, Indiana, Minnesota. So should be a good NBA game. Not a super exciting DFS game, at least with the information that we have right now. We do have a Q tag on Nikola Jokic. We have a Q tag on Jamal Murray. We have a Q tag on Aaron Gordon. Christian Brown is probable. So again, Julian Strawther is out. So again, there is the potential to have stuff that we really want from Denver. If you project all the Q tag guys in, they're just another one of these healthy secondary teams where it goes without saying that if you can fit Nikola Jokic into your lineup, you should do that. He's very good. Aaron Gordon at 5K, if he's healthy, probably playing north of 30 minutes, solid value, but not like the best value on the slate. Jamal Murray, Michael Porter, obviously these guys have ceilings. But where you do become very interested in Denver is if any of the Q-Tag guys miss. I've said it on shows before, but I'll reiterate it because the industry somehow gets it wrong every single time it happens, it seems like. The Nuggets do not play deep rotations when guys get ruled out. I thought they might do it last game against Washington. They were on a 3-4, a 5-7, a back-to-back. against the Wizards as like 13-point favorites, I actually projected a handful of minutes to an extra guy in their rotation. Chanchar played 2.5 minutes. That was the extent of it. Other than that, it was an 8-man rotation. Again, where Jokic played 39 minutes, Westbrook played 37, Porter played 37, Brown played 35, Murray played 36 and a half. This team is one of the teams where they generally play their starters, pretty heavy minutes anyway when they're healthy. But when you take out a starter, whether that is Murray or Jokic or Gordon, obviously Gordon, I guess, being the most likely candidate here, they adjust by obviously giving more minutes to the bench, with some combination of Pickett, Watson, Najee. But they also give more minutes to the starters. Christian Brown just plays more. Michael Porter plays more. These guys that can defend multiple positions, play multiple positions, they play more. Westbrook obviously plays more when he moves into the starting lineup. So do keep that in mind, because I assume, since they always do it, that what's going to happen is if one of these guys gets ruled out, industry projections will give like 6 minutes or something to Hunter Tyson, and they'll give like 34 minutes to Porter and Brown instead of 36, and they'll give 36 and a half to Murray and Jokic, or 36 to them instead of like 37 or 38. And you're just going to get a situation where they're naturally a little bit underprojected. So do keep that in mind. And then there is obviously the situation where they all rest and Jokic is out and Murray is out and Gordon is out. And then you're getting a bunch of playing time, not only from Brown and Porter, but then you're getting, Westbrook at 6,500 looking even better than he already would if just one of them is out. You're getting Peyton Watson at 3,900. You're getting Jalen Pickett at 3,200. So there is obviously the potential for Denver to really open up a lot of value here. So again, just another spot that you're going to want to be trying to keep some roster spots open for. Jake said Denver needs to just take the game off for rest. They look like shit so often. Yeah, I really can't believe how they handled the Washington game. The other thing there that was like mind-blowing was they downgraded Jamal Murray midday with a knee injury. Again, back-to-back 3-4, 5-7 against the Wizards at home. And then they still played him 36 and a half minutes. So I don't know what they're doing. It's hard for me to think that they're going to like just actively tank the Golden State game. But, I guess maybe the flip side is they wanted to make sure they would beat the Wizards, even though that still didn't happen. And maybe they'll just be willing to give one up to Golden State. But obviously I'm projecting these guys in until I hear otherwise. M. Wald said, catching up right now, but what do we think the chances of Kessler, DNP, CD is tonight again? Greater than 0, but small. I am kind of surprised that he's not on the injury report. So yeah, I mean, I can't put the value on that being too high. But it's obviously greater than 0 since they just did it. Optimal Prime said, Adam, is there any way possible we can get a somewhat of a later start time for the show, maybe up to 30 minutes before lock? Because I'd really like your input after injury news. No chance. Just not going to leave myself with that little time up until lock. But yeah, like you said, you can sign up for Endgame Syndicate. You can sign up for my NBA Dub Club. We do have Discords for both of those. Not that I am necessarily in there for like the entire time. I'm building lineups, but there are people in there talking, and I do pop in when I have anything interesting to say. But yeah, no, I refuse to do any shows within an hour of lock when I was getting paid a lot of money to do shows. Certainly not doing it now that I'm not. But yeah, it's definitely trying to find a balance, especially with NBA. Like I haven't been doing shows consistently because I haven't had time, even with, starting it earlier. So yeah, it's not going to happen. There's a better chance that it would happen with like baseball, just because obviously I don't have to be swapping as much stuff around lock, but now that's just lighting money on fire for NBA. Yeah, get the channel up to like 100K subs, and I'll start doing shows up until 30 minutes before. Golden State on the other side here. Q tag on Steph Curry obviously matters. Q tag on Quentin Post matters a lot less. Gary Payton is available. Man, this game really just has the potential to devolve into a complete dumpster fire and piss off a lot of people that have tickets to what they expect to be a really good game. Like I'm never like super sympathetic for the argument of, I bought tickets and then this star sat, like, yeah, it sucks, but happens in every sport. But like you buy tickets to a Golden State Denver game and then you just end up not seeing Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, or Aaron Gordon. Obviously, a couple of those guys more important, but like that would really suck. But we do have, the potential for that to happen here. But assuming that the Q tag guys play, $5,900 Draymond, 23% ownership. I'm getting 20%. Just looks like a solid enough value at power forward. One thing I will remind you too is players in this price range generally, these are the guys that fall off when you do start getting players ruled out, players from other teams, because the plays that are going to end up being the biggest priority on any slate are the best point per dollar projected plays and the highest raw projected plays. And so right now we're early enough in the day where we have a bunch of Q tag guys and they're projected in. And so somebody like Draymond Green looks like one of the better point per dollar projections at 5,900 because he's likely to play, low 30s in minutes. He's around a point per minute guy, and he just looks like a good play. You start getting guys ruled out in other games, and you get a situation where now the best point per dollar guys are 3,600 or 3,800 or 4K. And obviously Draymond's not one of the highest raw projected guys. And so he ends up going from what looks like, kind of a priority right now to like, an 8 or 10% owned guy. So just players, like that are the ones that are going to drop off the most as you start getting guys ruled out. But with the information we have right now, looks solid, good play. And then another good thing is that obviously by like having Draymond in your lineups at the start of the night, you are maintaining that flexibility. His game doesn't start till 10. You'll have the ability to turn him into some stuff from Utah. You'll obviously have the potential to turn him into some stuff from Denver if that goes to shit. Yeah, Gary Payton getting 9% ownership at 3,800. Again, like 16% of my lineups, cool. Very, very unlikely that by the time this game starts, it's actually Gary Payton in that spot. It's most likely guys from some other team that ruled guys out. But as a placeholder, I do like that he's starting in the 10 o'clock game, and I can turn him into some stuff that's better than Gary Payton. But, I guess if everybody does, all the Q tags do end up being in, you can do worse than a sub 4K Gary Payton playing without Brandon Pajemski. Payton played 25 minutes off the bench last game. He closed both halves against the Knicks. The minutes should be there. We got Santos in the starting lineup last game, but Payton played more minutes. But again, he probably just ends up turning into somebody else. As far as the rest of Golden State, if you get to some Steph, great. Looney, Butler, Moody, all secondary at best type options. Looney only showing up like 1% of the time because he's 3,200. He's just not going to end up in actual lineups by the time that we get to this game. Optimal Prime said, how much is it to sign up? To Jorge. Endgame is $150 a month. Endgame is the site that we have strategy and evergreen training videos from Utica, Brick75, Nerdy Tenor, myself, obviously active Discord as well. A lot of good players in there just talking about higher end stuff, things that if you find DFS interesting to the point where like you like to work at it, you want to try and get better at it, no matter what point you're at right now, you want to improve, even if, improve doesn't mean become the best player in the world. Nobody obviously is promising that, but you find the game interesting. You find wanting to work at it interesting. I think it's a great value. I would highly recommend it if that's the type of person that you are or player that you are. It's a lot of people that just enjoy talking about things that they're working on, things they've built, things that they have tried that did work, didn't work, whatever. So good community over there for that. And then my Dub Club with my projections and Discord is $30 a month. That link is in the description as well. That, obviously not it's just me kind of shooting the shit in Discord, posting my projections, not the same level of stuff that we have going on over at Endgame. But if you're just somebody that wants to plug projections in and run an optimizer and whatever, like that's available for you there. Projections are obviously available at Endgame as well. You better like listen. No, Davis is just Davis is in front of the paywall stuff. So whether you pay us or not, you get to listen to Davis, which obviously people joke about, but you should be very thankful for Davis because I've sat through plenty of meetings where it's just the four of us without Davis, and they're very boring and dry. Moving on to Memphis taking on Sacramento. Plenty of value here, or I guess specifically one big value piece here for Memphis with Scottie Pippen getting 33% ownership. He's in 33% of my lineups as well. He is questionable, so obviously there's the potential for that to go to shit, but John Morant is out. Gigi Jackson is out. Santi Aldama is doubtful. There are a lot of minutes available here. He is only $4,700. good chance he comes off the bench. I assume you're going to get a starting lineup of Kennard, Bane, I almost said Brooks, Kennard, Bane, Wells, Jackson, and Edey. But Pippen should still play plenty off the bench. He's a very good point per minute guy. And so he does look like a solid value here. He played 29 and a half minutes last game, didn't get garbage run. So even though it was a blowout, that wasn't the reason why. He closed the first half over Jalen Wells. He should play a bunch of minutes, even if he's not starting. So he looks like a good value. Jaren Jackson with no Morant, you do get a little bit higher ceiling for him. He is 8,400, which is a relatively expensive price tag. But I do like that we saw 33 minutes from him last game. Keep in mind that Santi Aldama does mean more playing time for Jaren Jackson as well. Then you take out Ja Morant's usage, and that's available for Jackson too. So at low ownership, I do think Jaren Jackson is a really solid contrarian play. Does have a very high ceiling here. Same goes for Desmond Bane. Like, he's up to 9K, shooting guard only. It's going to be very difficult to actually get Bane into your lineups. He's $300 less than Anthony Edwards, going back to the point that I was making about Edwards earlier. You can say, yes, Desmond Bane is better without Ja Morant. That is obviously true, but he's also priced in a range now where, he's more expensive than Halliburton. He's only 800 less than Cunningham. He's 300 less than Edwards. He's in this kind of star category, and that makes it tough to prioritize him. But if you can get there, obviously a very, very high ceiling. Luke Kennard, 4,500. If he starts, perfectly fine as a value option. Played 29 minutes last game. The playing time should be there for him. Obviously, he can get hot from three. And if he does, you're in pretty good shape. Richard said, wish Laravia got more minutes. Think he can play with Santi out. Laravia is on the Kings now. So no, he does get more minutes when Sabonis is out, but no, they traded Laravia. Laravia was part of the Zach LaVine trade, and he's now on the Kings. Zach Edey, can play a little bit more possibly without Aldama. Same for Jalen Wells, but I think truly the priorities here, Scottie Pippen, number one, and then it's kind of a step back to whatever Luke Kennard you can get to, whatever Jaren Jackson you can get to, whatever Desmond Bane you're going to get to, you're going to feel pretty good about. Sacramento, Jake LaRavia. On the other side, not playing LaRavia here, but nothing really showing up at all from the Kings. The highest projected ownership is going to Domas at 1.5%. Trey Lyles is questionable. Doesn't really matter. They're healthy. Domas was out for a little bit, so you saw prices come up on the other starters. But obviously, if you see a lineup and it has Sabonis in it or it has Malik Monk in it, you shouldn't throw the lineup away or something. They're good players, but there's just plenty of other guys that are much bigger priorities. Toronto, God, we have all of the terrible teams at the end of the night. Toronto, or I guess just throughout the slate, they're just all playing today. Toronto taking on Phoenix. In Phoenix, this should be great. RJ Barrett is out. Grady Dick is out. Obviously, Brandon Ingram is out. Jakob Poeltl is out. Jacoby Walter is out. Jared Rhoden is out. Orlando Robinson should be a solid value play at center. He is 5K. Keep in mind, you cannot get center wrong. The opportunity cost makes it so, if you play 5K Orlando Robinson and he scores 30 fantasy points, you are probably screwed, even though it's a good score for his salary. If he were a small forward and scored 30 fantasy points, you can probably get away with it. On a 10-game slate, you're probably just going to have centers that score 50-plus fantasy points, and you're going to be in trouble if your value center scores 28, and you can't have those two centers that went nuts. But Orlando Robinson is a good point per minute guy. He does have a high ceiling. He is, playing without Poeltl. So he does look like a very solid play here. I'm right around the field, 25% projected ownership. I have 27%. $4,900 AJ Lawson should get plenty of minutes with all of these guys out. But he's not a great point per minute guy. And the salary has come up to nearly 5K. You do have Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel quickly in. So it's not like a situation the other day where you had AJ Lawson out there just chucking up shots constantly either. I'm not getting to $6,700 quickly or whatever Barnes is. I have no projection on Barnes, but he's not on the injury report. Not sure what happened there. But either way, wouldn't expect to double checking this because I assumed he would be out. SaberSim has him out, but I'm looking at the injury report. Unless I'm blind, he's not on it. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what's going on with Scotty Barnes because he's not listed as out. Yeah, I uploaded something wrong. I don't know what I did. But anyway, I wouldn't expect to be getting too much Scotty Barnes anyway, because we know Toronto will probably limit his minutes here. If this game is competitive, they will probably just not play him at the end. We saw it again yesterday. They lost by 3 to the Blazers. He played 28 minutes. He was not on the floor. The closing lineup in a game decided by 3 points was Orlando Robinson, Colin Castleton, AJ Lawson, Jamison Battle, and Ochai Agbaji. Pirtle was not out there. Barnes was not out there. Jamal Shed is too good to be out there. So yeah, I mean, it's tough with Barnes. Like, you got 45 fantasy points or so out of him yesterday. That's probably pretty close to as good as you can hope for. Like, there's just no indication he's playing more than 27, 28 minutes. So pretty tough to want to get to him. Yeah. So even though I screwed up the projection here, I don't think I'd be getting to him anyway. Doesn't really change much. And overall, Toronto isn't going to look great, but Orlando Robinson specifically does look very good. On the other side for Phoenix, no Bradley Beal, no Grayson Allen. Probable tags on Cody Martin, Monte Morris, Nick Richards, varying levels of mattering to those. The priority here is Tyus Jones, 4,300 without Bradley Beal. We know that he plays more when Beal is out. He did not start the second half without Beal yesterday. Colin Gillespie did. So that is something you'll have to keep an eye on. Gillespie ended up playing 23 and a half minutes yesterday. Jones played 23 and a half minutes. Jones was in the closing lineup along with Durant, Beal, Dunn/Martin, and Iguodaro. So we will need to wait for the starting lineup here. Like, if you get Colin Gillespie at 3K starting, then obviously that's a really good value play. My assumption is that they'll go to Tyus Jones here, but they don't have to. Either way, you're going to get a good value point guard from Phoenix. Jones is only 4,300. He plays more when Beal is out. Even when he was a starter, he played more when Beal is out because it opens the door for him to be in the closing lineup. But obviously going from the bench to the starting lineup, he's going to look better. Even if he comes off the bench, he's probably playing like mid-20s in minutes, which would make him look okay at 4,300. But if he's coming off the bench and it's Gillespie starting, you'll clearly want more 3K Gillespie. Nick Richards getting 9% ownership. I do think he's an interesting contrarian play. Again, you can't be wrong at center, but he's only $4,400. The playing time is all over the place as Phoenix just tries to figure out what the hell they're doing. Different rotations, that can work. But if he's playing well, Richards can get mid-20s in minutes. He's only 4,400. He is going up against a relatively big front court still with Robinson. So I'm interested in Richards. I wouldn't hate if I lose some of this exposure, but because he is obviously risky with the opportunity cost, but you're basically getting a floor price on Nick Richards here, and he is a good point per minute guy. Ryan Dunn, 3,800, has been in the starting lineup the last couple of games. Still only played 23 minutes yesterday. You can't trust the playing time here, and he's not a great point per minute guy, but he is still really cheap. So I don't mind taking some shots at him. And then you get the actual, real players here where Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are just kind of secondary options where they're playing a lot of minutes, but they're also in that 9 to 10K range where they're competing with other very, very, very good players. And then again, pay attention to the starting lineup here with Gillespie. For Iguodaro, Mason Plumlee is not on the injury report. So keep that in mind, that Iguodaro is useless again. Washington taking on Portland in Portland. For the Wizards, no Koulibaly, no Corey Kispert, no Malcolm Brogdon. Marcus Smart is questionable. Jalen Martin is available. So we do have a little bit different look for the Wizards here with Kispert out. Kispert got hurt last game, played 15 minutes in that one. You got 18 minutes off the bench for AJ Johnson last game. That was without Marcus Smart, who was ruled out like 15 minutes before the game out of nowhere. Smart had actually been playing more minutes. So interesting to see, what happens there. If Smart ends up being in at 4K, he is a secondary play that you can get to. The Wizards, even though they are tanking and they are not good, they generally play it pretty straight up. They haven't done any really egregious, intentionally losing games or anything. We saw them just go in and beat Denver with Jordan Poole hitting a buzzer beater. So they are, for whatever reason, actually ramping up Marcus Smart's minutes. He's closed the last couple of games, not that he's a great player or anything like that. He's still probably playing 22 to 24 minutes, but we have seen them going that route for whatever reason. 4K shooting guard, small forward, if he's in, is viable. If he's out, it's opening up, AJ Johnson minutes, which at 3,200 doesn't really matter. Champagny should find minutes one way or the other. He is up to $5,400, but he should play quite a bit. Played 39 minutes last game, and he is somebody that, can play multiple positions and can kind of just fill in for pick up some of those, Corey Kispert minutes that are vacated. So I think that 21% ownership to him, I'm getting 24%, just looks like a pretty solid value play. Sar at 6,500, center only makes it tough. I think he has power forward eligibility on FanDuel, which makes him a little bit more playable. Jordan Poole, 7K, obviously has a ceiling, but there's plenty of 7K, give or take, guards that have high ceilings. So mostly I think you're looking at secondary plays from the Wizards, with the exception right now, at least, of Champagny being a little bit more of a priority. But he is also somebody that probably falls off a little bit once you start getting other players ruled out. You start getting sub 4K value opening up. You get into a situation where you don't, like I was saying with Draymond, Champagny's not the highest scorer on the slate. He's not the best point per dollar value once those guys start getting ruled out. So you probably see the ownership come down. But with the information we have right now, he does look pretty good. On the Portland side, DeAndre Ayton is out. Tumani Kamara is questionable. Jeremy Grant is doubtful. Ryan Rupert is out. Jabari Walker is out. Robert Williams is out. So as usual, we do have varying levels of injury news for the Blazers. And again, this is a team that usually runs relatively tight rotations when they're missing guys. Yesterday, they did go 9. They went 8.5 yesterday. That's pretty much, or kind of 9, I guess. They gave 4 minutes to Banton. They gave 6 to Thibault. So 8.5, 9-man rotation yesterday. Probably we'll see something similar here. Again, Kamara is questionable too, which if he's out, probably moves either Thibault or Murray or Scoot into the starting lineup. But they do have a good matchup here. Donovan Clingan, 21% ownership at 5,800. I like him a lot. I'm basically 2x the field on him. Good spot against Washington. You still don't have Robert Williams, so the playing time should look good for Clingan as well. He played 30 minutes yesterday. You're seeing him, kind of live in that range. Playing times look good when he avoids foul trouble. So I like Clingan a lot. Avdia going up against his former team, 34% ownership at 7,100. I'm right there at 35%. Was relatively disappointing yesterday, but he is a good point per minute guy. There are minutes available with Grant and Ayton out, and then if you take Kamara out, it's even more minutes. He played 34 minutes yesterday. There is always the potential for him to play a bit more. So right now, the priorities to me look like Clingan and Avdia. And then, if you're getting to some Henderson, some Kamara, some Simons, some Sharp, any of that stuff is fine. If Kamara is in, I do think it's worth noting that he does see a little bit of an uptick in playing time when Grant is out. Typically averages 34, 35 minutes, and you're not getting too much ownership there at 5,400 with shooting guard, small forward eligibility. But again, he is questionable as well. So there's going to be pieces you want from the Blazers. You just kind of need Kamara's status to know exactly who those pieces are. But one way or the other, I think Clingan and Avdia are going to look very good. And then if Kamara's out, Simons, Sharp will look marginally better. Scoot will look marginally better. One of Murray, Thibault, Banton, ends up looking better as well. Don't know what that starting lineup would actually look like. Spurs taking on the Lakers in the last game of the night. This game is not on the FanDuel slate. It is on the DraftKings slate. I guess they figured anybody who hates themselves enough to play a slate with 4 10 p.m. games will want to suck it up and also play the 10:30 game, which I think is true. I would rather them either just take all the 10 p.m. games off or leave the Lakers game. So I'm glad that they did that. For San Antonio, Q-tag on Jordan McLaughlin, which does not matter. Wemby obviously is out. De'Aaron Fox is out. Malachi Branham and Charles Bassey are both out as well. So you do have plenty of minutes available here for the Spurs. Last game, we got Castle moving into the starting lineup, playing 36 minutes without De'Aaron Fox. I would expect similar tonight. Chris Paul still only played 22 minutes despite Fox being out. So he's kind of just seemingly on, I'm not going to say a minutes limit, but we're not making the playoffs. We don't give a shit about giving Chris Paul minutes limit. So that's something to keep in mind. Like, there is the potential that you just get 28 minutes from Chris Paul and at 5K, he ends up being great. Maybe Chris Paul just really wants to play in LA or whatever. But the clear assumption here should be that they're just not playing Chris Paul a ton of minutes at this point. But Castle looks good at 6,600. Obviously, relatively expensive price tag keeps him from being a true priority, but 13% ownership. I'm getting to 19%. Jeremy Sohan, 5,100. I'm around 2x the field on him. He played 30.5 minutes off the bench last game. He closed. We got 12 minutes from Bismack Biyombo. We got 12 minutes from Mamu. That leaves left 24 minutes for small lineups, which is good for Keldon Johnson, who played 30 minutes. It's good for Jeremy Sohan, who played 30.5 minutes. It's good for Julian Champagnie, who played 24.5 minutes. And I think it's likely that you see similar here against the Lakers. There's no reason that they need to be prioritizing Bismack Biyombo or Mamu against the Lakers, I don't think. So I like Sohan as a value play. I think Keldon's interesting as a value play. Devin Vassell is relatively expensive at 6,900, but if you can get to him in some lineups, fine. There's nobody out here really competing for usage with him. It's a relatively low usage starting lineup alongside him with Biyombo and Barnes as two of the other four pieces. So the ceiling is high for Vassell. He is playing big minutes, but the salary has adjusted also. So the Spurs look like a pretty good team. Just looking at the starters, basically minus Chris Paul, or not even the starters minus Chris Paul. Looking basically at Castle, Sohan, Johnson, Vassell. Vassell being the lesser owned of the four. And then for the Lakers, still no LeBron James. Luka is probable. Dorian Finney-Smith is probable. Rui is out. Trey Jemison is out. Maxey is out. Luka is a clear priority on this slate, even right now. And Luka looks better as guys start getting ruled out because it just becomes even easier to get him into lineups. 12K, 35% ownership. He's showing up 45% for me. There's not a lot to say here. It's Luka without LeBron, without any other sort of high usage guy playing alongside of him. Clearly, he's gotten his legs back. He, has been producing relatively well. Played 40 minutes yesterday. Maybe they don't play him 40 minutes today on the back-to-back, but clearly he's going to look very, 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 very good and will look even better as other players start getting ruled out. So far on the Lakers without LeBron on the floor, Luka has played 226 minutes. He has produced 1.78 DraftKings points per minute, 1.7 FanDuel points per minute. He has a 43.3% usage rate. He has a 46.3% assist percentage. The guy is essentially handling every single possession that the Lakers have when he is on the floor without LeBron James. He's 12K, but you're not going to be short on value on this slate. And you also don't have Giannis. You do have Jokic, but it's at a position where the opportunity cost is a lot higher. And then, maybe you don't have Jokic, but you don't have Giannis. Obviously, you don't have LeBron or Anthony Davis. Obviously, you don't have Wemby. There's not that many guys even competing with Luka for raw points. Just looking at my DraftKings projections right now, I have Luka and Jokic right around 65 fantasy points, give or take a point one way or the other. I have Luka slightly higher than Jokic, but then you have Cade Cunningham at 51 DraftKings points and nobody else above 50. So on a slate with a ton of value, you just have this clear top tier in terms of projection with Luka and Jokic. And then Luka comes with lower opportunity cost as well. So very obviously a priority. I like getting to Austin Reeves here at low ownership as well. This is a spot with Reeves at 8,600 or 8,900 rather, where I think the amount of value that you're going to have on a 10-game slate is really important to keep in mind because 8,900 for Reeves is more or less the correct price tag, I think. And that's reflected in the ownership. But you're going to end up with a bunch of guys that are $1,000 to $2,500 underpriced because of injuries on their team. And so, again, it just becomes about raw points, not about point per dollar at that point. And Austin Reeves can just go give you 50 at 8,900, and it's not going to matter that he's 8,900 instead of 8,100 or whatever. You're just going to need that 50 or 55. So I do like him as a contrarian play. Jordan Goodwin as a semi-value option at 4,900 with shooting guard, small forward looks pretty good. Goodwin started and played 28 minutes yesterday. Solid enough point per minute guy, although obviously that production does take a little bit of a hit when you're playing alongside Luka, but still 75 minutes played for him with Luka on and LeBron off. 0.91 DraftKings points per minute. Reeves in those minutes is at 1.1 DraftKings points per minute. So I really like the backcourt here for the Lakers, and I think the field will too, but it looks like I'm a little bit higher than they are. Other than that, I have nothing from the Lakers. The field has nothing from the Lakers. So that is every game. Jake said, "Can you go through your center exposures?" Yes, but it ends up being kind of weird because of how it's sorted in SaberSim. It's only going to show you this is how often I have them at the center position. And then if I click on utility, it's how often I have them at the utility position. So I guess I could do this. Can I sort by? Yeah, I guess that's an easier way to do it. Klingon, Vooch, Robinson, Toppin, but probably playing him at power forward when I can. Same for Draymond, Richards, Sohan, Jackson, our power forwards, Jokic. So as far as the actual centers right now, Klingon, Vooch, Robinson, the priorities for me. Vooch, again, I think more of a contrarian play, but a good play. And then same for Nick Richards here, where it's just an ownership play with a lot of risk. Klingon and Robinson, I think, are priorities for me and the field. So that wraps this one up. Thank you for checking it out. I will, like I said, try and be more consistent with NBA. Somebody asked earlier too, I guess they missed it at the top. I will be more consistent with MLB. It's just not as time consuming a sport. I can much easier commit to doing shows most days to talk about baseball. So gonna, try and get myself back in the habit with NBA and then really get into it with baseball. But see you guys back here most likely tomorrow, if not later on in the week. Reminder, subscribe to the links in the description below. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you get alerts when I am going to do shows. Good luck on your lineups tonight, and thanks for checking out the show.